Good morning and welcome to Wake Up. Let's go.
Wake up, all you need to know. You can find it here at the Sonia Poulton Show. Giving you the lowdown where others will not go. Wake up to the Sonia Poulton Show.
Good morning, or wake up indeed to the Sonia Poulton Show, although it is actually Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests. But thank you, of course, to our wonderful friend John from Norwich. Hope you're healing well, John. Thank you for our intro. And welcome to Wake Up, the show that knows Joan of Arc was not non-binary, as poor children are being taught in UK secondary schools, but was in fact a fully functioning female who was only a teenager when she went into battle. So the history books tell us, of course, and yes, they could be lying to us all about all manner of things. But generally, when it comes to female achievements, history is usually grudgingly forced to admit women's achievements. So there's every reason to believe there may be some truth in it. It's difficult to tell, regardless. What isn't difficult to tell, and no amount of history is going to change this, is that it is highly unlikely that Joan of Arc thought of herself as non-binary, because that's only what idiots talk about these days. How are you all? Grand risings to you all. Welcome to Wake Up. Thank you for the fantastic response to my Madeleine McCann investigation on Friday. And absolutely, I will do that more regularly now. I really will. Fantastic comments. So grateful for them. But it's also gave me lots of fresh new ideas as well, which I absolutely appreciate. And if you have a suggestion for the next investigation, please send it to my email. I often won't see it if it's in the comments or live chat. I do look down them, but because I have so many different messages to look at on a constant basis, it is possible that I may miss it if you put it in the live chat or in the comments. So please do send your suggestions to soniapoulton@sky.com. Thank you so much. It doesn't have to be an internationally known story like Madeleine McCann, but it does need to have broad appeal. So what's on Wake Up today? Well, we often focus on things, don't we? On concepts, on politics or law, or what in general is happening in the land. But today, I want to focus on the people who are doing that stuff. So this is Wake Up's People edition. And we're going to be looking at arrested MP Dan Norris, charged Russell Brand, confusion, Virginia Giuffre, backlash, Trump's tariffs. And Terrence Howard, actor, has been talking about Puffy and the Man card. Rupert Lowe, rape gang fund, fight back Lucy Letby, Lucy Connolly. Is this a two-tier justice we're looking at, or is this just the law? And Gary Stevenson, that math genius, does he add up? And final thought, I'll be revealing my fears and I'll be telling you how to stand up to yours. We'll be rounding all that off with my favorite psychotherapist, John Hendon, who will be here to talk about an alternative way to deal with significant mental health issues. So how are you all in the chat today? And I did see a comment saying about something to do with spanners and me losing access to my account. That was Shin. That was Soul Sound. But she's back today. And thank you already for coffee tips. Very much appreciate it. So first of all, a picture of a sellout. Let me find him. Here he is. Here's RFK Jr. So much hope was riding on this man. It was like he really understood the influence of Big Pharma. And we were also, well, many of us were happy to see him given the role of health secretary in the US. And when I presented a Q&A at the premiere of Andrew Wakefield's film Protocol 7 about the MMR jab, Andrew said his main hope was resting on Trump getting in and RFK Jr. being the health secretary. Well, it's happened. And RFK Jr. tweeted his full and wholehearted support of the MMR jab. After all of this, he said the most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine. YouTube rules prevent me from saying exactly what I think, but my face should say enough. I am absolutely appalled and disgusted. I am so disappointed. Such a great disappointment, Christine. Such a great disappointment. And hello to my mods there. He duped us. London lady, he duped us. He really did. And don't forget, he's kind of like, he's involved in kind of like biotech stuff, isn't he? There was that cross-examining of him having shares and how he benefited from C19. He was like, no, I won't have them. And he was going to transfer them to members of his family. And we've seen him in action. We know he's absolutely sold out to the Israel Zionist lobby. So unfortunately, this is what a living, breathing sellout looks like. Blue Nomad said, not disappointed. I knew it was coming. And that is the reality for some people. I just wanted it to be what we thought it was going to be. I mean, this is a man who wrote the book about Fauci. Isn't it awful what happens to people when they get into positions of power? Absolutely horrendous. Really disappointing. Very, very disappointing. And Trump's Liberation Day tariffs are impacting the whole world, of course. Massive protests in the US against these, as well as against the Elon Musk run Doge. We all know Elon Musk is on his way out. That's why he started being contrary about Trump's rulings, about Trump's ideas, including the tariffs. Elon Musk was part of some sort of event over the weekend, and he was talking about how he doesn't agree. And then he had a falling out with one of Trump's men in the administration. I thought this was very interesting. Good morning to Mark Atwood. I picked this up from your tweet, Mark. Thought this was very interesting. Interesting front cover in today's Irish Business Post. Picture of Trump, new world order, because it is, isn't it? It's Trump's new world order. And we can all see where it's heading. I'm so upset about, I am actually literally so upset about the RFK Jr. I was expecting more. That'll teach me, won't it? That will absolutely teach me. And so there is trouble in Trump land, as we know. There's problems with Elon Musk, and there's problems with these tariffs. And what's actually going to happen in the UK, Keir Starmer yesterday in the Sunday Telegraph, and today they're going to be declaring an end to globalisation. You heard me right. Keir Starmer, one of probably the most kind of like globalist agendaed prime ministers in recent years, is going to announce an end to globalization, saying it's failed. In his first major interview since kind of like Trump's tariffs, he's going to be responding to the global economic challenges by saying it is now time for us to look more inwards. We shall see. We shall sodden well see. I'd be surprised, right? But I just think it's interesting, because I think what's going on there is the kind of like, that's the pushback, isn't it, against what Trump is doing? I mean, what Trump is doing, it's having a detrimental impact on markets already. They're talking about it's going to be another Black Monday. And so I think what's going to be interesting is see exactly what Starmer will say today. Of course, Darren Jones, I wonder if I got an image of him. Yes, I have. Darren Jones is Chief Secretary to the Treasury. So somebody who's involved with our finances. So basically Rachel Reeves' underling. And he was on a TV show yesterday, and he was also backing up Keir Starmer's idea that we're going to be ending globalization. I can't see it somehow. I cannot see it somehow, but we shall see. We shall absolutely see. And so so what Darren Jones said is globalization, as we've known it for the last couple of decades, has come to an end. And I'm not sure where they got that idea from, because I actually think that certainly up to present time, we are more globalized than ever. So I'm not sure where that came from, but Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch disagreed that globalization was over, pointed to great trading relationships with other countries. And Starmer says he vows to protect UK businesses from the tariff storm. And he's going to be drawing up a list of US products it could hit with tariffs. We shall see. Of course, Elon Musk is not happy because the whole tariff thing will impact his cars, the Tesla cars, which they're already in a bad enough state as it is. And what about the Cybertruck? All the recalls that is taking place with the Cybertruck. This is what happens when you repeatedly tell someone who is not a genius that they are a genius, right? This is literally what happens. You end up with a sodding Cybertruck, ugly as whatever, absolutely ugly. And so Darren Jones insisted that the government was just trying to get ahead of these challenges, the challenges of tariffs, and how we can assist ourselves. Now, I thought the whole idea of Brexit was so that we were going to be more inward looking, that we were going to be more independent. But that isn't what happened, obviously. Brexit really happened in name only for the most part, as we know. So again, we shall see. I'm not putting much hope on any of this, but to hear the Prime Minister say the end of globalisation, that already made me feel a little bit like, oh my God, what's on the agenda? What is coming up? What are they going to be doing next? Difficult to tell, isn't it? Difficult to tell. How are you in the comments? Klaus Schwab resigning. Now, I heard that. Is that true? Yeah, in name only. Yes, Stephen, welcome back to the comments. Anyone hear what Musk's nanny said? She said he was the Antichrist, says James Vega. I mean, none of that would surprise anybody, right? I mean, I just think he's an absolutely repugnant individual with very low morals, and he's just like a robot, really. He significantly lacks any kind of like compassion or empathy, and then cries like a baby on Fox when people are boycotting his really quite crappy products. So there you go. The end of civilization, says Maria. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Right. Let us talk about politics, and let us talk about an arrest. Dan Norris. Labour has suspended MP and Mayor Dan Norris after he was arrested on suspicion of sexual offences against a girl. The party confirmed on Saturday night that they had suspended Norris after being informed of his arrest. The MP for North East Somerset and Henham has also lost the party whip in the House of Commons. Avon and Somerset police said that a man in his 60s was arrested on Friday and has subsequently been released on conditional bail. And don't forget, this is a live investigation. No charges as yet, right? But I thought it would be really good to bring out some videos. And a lot of today, you will notice we're not monetized today. We're not monetized today because I really want to keep developing Wake Up. And one of the things I want to do more on Wake Up is actually show videos to accompany what it is I'm saying. And the problem is when you show videos, you kind of get done for it for copyright or whatever. Whereas if you don't monetize it, you don't fall into those same hands. So here we go. We're going to do a lot more illustrative work on today's show. And let us start with this. This is Keir Starmer promoting Dan Norris.
Dan Norris, Labour's candidate to be the West of England mayor.
Ooh.
The choice in these elections couldn't be clearer. The Conservative Metro mayor who's been invisible and failed to secure investment in the area, or Labour's Dan Norris. Dan will be a strong voice for the West of England, the voice they deserve. He'll invest in creating green jobs of tomorrow. He'll support farmers and local businesses. And he'll drive forward connectivity for the region, from buses to broadband. Vote for Dan Norris to be the West of England mayor. Vote for Marvin Rees to continue his work delivering for people as Bristol mayor. Vote.
Yeah, whatever, Keir, whatever. And there's another video I also want to show as well. And that is because Dan Norris was very much seen within the party as the man who was involved in child safeguarding, was trained by the NSPCC. And let's have a little listen to this.
Action officer, which is something that you're particularly interested in.
Yeah. I mean, children have always been very important to me in their welfare and their life. They're doing well and surviving in what is a tough world very often for children. And I've always felt that they need good people in their lives more than anybody, because they can't go to lawyers or politicians or whatever as young people or children when they need help. So I've always felt it's very, very important. So I was very lucky. I got a really good training by the NSPCC in East London, which taught me a great deal about some very difficult things that you have to address when it comes to child protection. And I won't go into those too much, but people will understand. And it's a hugely important job. And I think that training was a wonderful thing, not just for me, hopefully doing a better job as a child protection officer when I was in the Bristol area and the southwest of England actually practicing, but also I think in terms of politics, I think it gives you a great self-discipline. I think it gives you a great focus. I think you have to know what your priorities are. You have to expect the unexpected. You have to remain in control and calm when things are very difficult and tough. So I think it was a great training for life as well as for doing a job. So I remember that very fondly. But what I realise is that there's still so much to do in terms of children and their welfare. I mean, although great strides have been made in some respects, there are still many more poor children, children in need, children with neglect as well as abuse. Is a huge challenge there. And I certainly, if I become Metro Mayor, want to talk about those issues just as I did in the past to help bring about the important solutions that we need to make children's lives better.
I see. He wants to bring about the important solutions we need to help make children's lives better. If you, at the start of that clip, she said, you know, you're involved in child safeguarding, you're interested in child safeguarding. He said, I used to be. So that's interesting. So he's not yet been charged, to my understanding. We can comment on Mr. Morris's public image, as I say, that of a child safeguarding expert who trained with the NSPCC. It is fairly well known that the NSPCC is a deeply problematic organisation. Some people believe it is a gatekeeping operation that has failed children many decades over. Anybody who lines with the NSPCC is I am suspicious of. Absolutely, I'm suspicious of. Whether that's smaller charities who want to get involved because they're like, oh, I can get some of that NSPCC cash or whatever. And obviously, we had people like Jimmy Savile who was involved with the NSPCC. It's well-known place for child predators to gravitate to. And of course, I'm not saying that about Mr. Norris at this stage, and that he's not been charged. It would be defamatory for me to accuse him of any of those things. But I do think it's interesting, his history. And I just want to say, I think this is important. Now, the other thing is, right, is that he was also he was the chairman of the League Against Cruel Sports, and he stepped down from his role in that. And what happened was Mr. Norris had defeated Jacob Rees-Mogg to win the new seat of North East Somerset in last year's general election. He won only with a majority of 5,319. He's currently West of England Metro Mayor. And I saw somebody in the comments talk about how we don't need any more mayors. I completely agree. It's like we are literally falling over ourselves with these elected bodies that aren't doing sod all. They're doing jack squat, right? What has happened to the nice people in society? Who knows? Ivor Kaplan. Well, of course, we know about him, right? So I just want to say, right, that while these allegations against Dan Norris are absolutely, you know, interesting and important, and obviously he's a Labour member, it's really important to note that paedophile allegations in the British establishment are not linked to one party. It's looking like it because there's a big political push online to kind of make it look like Labour is full of paedophiles. But the reality is I made paedophiles in Parliament exactly because of the fact that for the last 40 plus years, there have been allegations across all parties in the British political system. And so anybody who is pushing the idea that child abuse is somehow a left issue for the lefties, they are not interested in child safeguarding. They are interested in party politics. So it's important to know that. And as I say, that's exactly why I made Pip. Talking of which, got some good news. Talking of which, about paedophiles in Parliament. In November last year, I was approached by a producer from a streaming service, big streaming service, one of the biggest. And she had loved Paedophiles in Parliament 1. And she wondered if I was going to be doing PIP 2. And I said, oh, absolutely. But I've got a documentary I need to finish first. Anyway, that was last November. Anyway, she contacted me again last week. Says she's just been promoted and she is interested in us resuming our conversation about PIP 2. She feels now is absolutely the time to do it. And my worry, of course, as I said to her before, was I would be very, very concerned if I got involved with a big streaming service, because even though you can obviously offer the platform, which is fantastic, I would be really worried about losing control. And she said, no, you build that into your contract, obviously. And now that they've seen that you've done PIP 1, that would change the game. It's not like they have to imagine what PIP 2 would be about. And I just thought, whoa, good news. Well, you can never tell, right? Is this good news or a trap? Says Soul Sand. You can never tell, right? So I have to be careful. But all I can tell you is I'm so excited about the idea of doing that. So excited because since I released Paedophiles in Parliament in 2018, oh my days, that film, it's been savaged, it's been attacked, it's been taken offline, it's been put back on again. I mean, I've been through the mill with that film. So I would be delighted to make PIP 2 with a proper budget and knowing it's going out on a big streaming service. So I will go with my gut. You're absolutely right. So we're going to have a meeting and see where it takes us from there. So there you go. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because that's quite exciting for me. I want to talk about Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe, I see this morning. This is phenomenal. The rape gang inquiry. Rupert Lowe, of course, former Reform MP, getting smeared beyond belief now. Now, it highly likely that Rupert Lowe and I would have very little in common, but I do like the fact that he is prepared to stand up and be counted, which is more than can be said for a lot of MPs. Anyway, he launched this rape gang inquiry last week, and this morning they were well over 500,000. And he actually made a video about it at the weekend, and I'd like to share that with you if you haven't already seen it. And more power to his elbow, frankly. Let's have a little look at that. Let's bring him on.
Delighted to say we've just reached £500,000 on our crowdfunder to fund what I call the People's Inquiry into this blot on our history, the Pakistani rape gang scandal, which the government has singularly failed to deal with from top to bottom. Both Conservatives and Labour, the police, the social services, everybody involved have let us down. And what I think this shows is the depth of feeling amongst the people. And I am humbled that they have put their faith in me to try and do my best to uncover the truth and shame people, and particularly the Labour Party, into what is required, which is a statutory investigation into this stain on our history. So thank you all very much. It's incredible. It's an incredible result from all of us, and hopefully it will at least go some way to finding the truth. All the very best, and have a great weekend. Bye.
And I actually think his intentions are good on this. I do. But I think that he's stretching himself a bit thin right now. He's trying to cover all manner of areas. And that is the problem. When you become this kind of like solo MP, people come at you with all different suggestions. And actually, there was a comment left on Friday. And I kind of hear what the person is saying as well. Let me just find it. Deborah Thompson said, can I ask why? This was the Madeleine McCann investigation that I was doing. And Deborah Thompson's comment was, can I ask why there has not been a public inquiry into the millions spent on this one case, which has resulted in absolutely nothing? The government would only give 5 million to the limited inquiries of the grooming gangs, which involve thousands of child abuse victims. And she's right, of course, there's not been an inquiry because Operation Grange exists. And that's another reason for them to keep it going. But then she went on to say that perhaps we could ask Rupert Lowe, seeing as he's the only one at the moment standing up to be counted, to actually ask a question in Parliament, as he seems to be the one who's doing it. Well, that wouldn't take too much out of him to ask to present the Prime Minister with a question, and that is, we want an update on Operation Grange. Why is it ongoing? And can we have more details of where the money has been spent? I think that would be a brilliant idea. Well done. Well done, Deborah. I totally support that idea. I really do totally support that idea. And obviously, Rupert Lowe going through it right now, right? We now know that he was not only kicked out of Reform over so-called bullying allegations. He had his weapons seized last month from his farm in the Cotswolds. And he said, this is what Rupert Lowe said, I am 67 years old. I have a 67-year-long unblemished record with the law. These are false allegations designed to maliciously smear my name, ruin my reputation after I dared to bruise Farage's ego. The disruption to my life has been significant, with incredibly damaging and distressing consequences for my family. Weaponizing the police process to vindictively attack and silence a party colleague is unprecedented wickedness. And a Reform UK spokesman said, Mr. Lowe is being investigated by the police for making multiple threats to kill our chairman. The first was in December, the second in February. And like Mr. Lowe, we respect their investigation and will let them do their work without lashing out and making false claims in public. And Rupert Lowe has made many claims. If I could give him any advice, and that was tone it down a little bit, like literally tone it down a little bit, because he is starting to look a little bit like crazy and wired out there. You do not have to respond to everything that's said about you. That is one of the quickest ways for you to look unhinged. And then he's online going, I'm hearing of more sickening rumours that Reform figures continue to spread the malicious lies that I have dementia. Just ignore it. There comes a point when you have to put on your big boy pants and just ignore it. We all do. Any one of us that is in public life, we have to get to a point where we go, right, that's ridiculous, not respond to that, ignore. But he is spreading himself a bit thin, but he's starting to reveal that his interest is really more about a culture than it is about justice. And the reason I say that is because he now wants to ban halal slaughter. And I couldn't agree more. As somebody who doesn't eat meat, I couldn't agree more. But as Belstaffy said on X, it's kosher meat too. If we go on this, we must include kosher meat to be banned in the UK, as focusing on halal meat would be direct discrimination. I thank you for not sharing animal cruelty videos, because he didn't. So the point is that he's all focused on the Muslims. That's what's happened. And come on, Rupert, don't be that transparent, mate. If you really want to get rid of animal cruelty, well, you're not going to get rid of animal cruelty just by getting rid of halal and kosher, right? Because the stuff that happens in abattoirs is beyond belief. But the point is if you're going to say, let's get rid of killing animals this way, you've got to do it all across the board, right? Otherwise, it starts to look like you're a bit captured. And I have a problem with that. And I also see that Farage has been reported to the police. They're all at it. Catherine Blakelock, the woman who founded Reform UK, has just literally, I think it was over the weekend, reported, actually it was Friday, reported Nigel Farage for fraudulent breach of trust, fraudulent document procedures, and harassment and bullying. These people are just awful. They are just so savaging of each other. You know, if it was about the truth and not just political maneuvers, why didn't you do all that before, Catherine? Why didn't you? And I can't stand Farage. I can't stand him. I refuse to attend a dinner with him. That's how much I can't stand him. But a lot of it starts to look a little bit transparent. Really, it does. And it's problematic. It's problematic. They reveal themselves all scurrying like rats, says Lisa. Yes, indeed, they do. They know what's coming. Who's paying the legal bills? Who's paying his legal bills? I suppose he is. But it's a good question, right? I don't think he's publicly funded, right? So I don't know. Loads of news today. Do you know, the thing is, right? And honestly, I have to agree with Lisa, and that is the UK is getting wise. And the thing is that all this stuff now is happening in real time. Like, we are seeing them doing stuff and we're able to go, whoa, we don't really like stuff like that. That's not right. That's not adding up. That's not joined up thinking. It's like, you know, that's taking out 1, 2, and 3, but it's ignoring 4 and 5. And we're able to do that in very real time. No wonder they want to clamp down on us. Darren, I will not start any kind of movement. Spare me. Come on now. No. I'm done with all that sort of stuff. Right. It's really hard leading anything. Don't get me wrong. It really is hard. And I have absolute admiration for anybody who's prepared to do it, as long as it's for the right reasons. Right. Talking about somebody who always believes himself to be absolutely a leader. And this one, we have to be careful because this is a live case. I'm sure you all recognize the man on the screen. He is, of course, Russell Brand. He's been charged. He is, of course, now the latter-day American Christian influencer. He's been charged with 1 count each of rape, indecent assault, and oral rape, as well as 2 counts of sexual assault. He's denied all the accusations. The allegations span from 1999 to 2005 and involve 4 women. He is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Friday, the 2nd of May. Police have said Brand is accused of raping a woman in the Bournemouth area in 1999 and indecently assaulting a woman in the Westminster area of London in 2001. He is also accused of orally raping and sexually assaulting a woman in Westminster in 2004. And as I said, it's a live case, so we must be careful. And like some of the crazy people out there assuming his guilt or otherwise, that's known as sub judice and can land you in court for contempt. People don't care. They just want to be the first to gossip, right? I saw one person who I believe is absolutely a plant, and he immediately did a 2-hour plus live stream about Russell Brand. Like, even news shows, right? News shows who know what's what will at the most do like 5 minutes to cover Russell Brand because they know there's a problem. You can't be spitting all manner of stuff about people. We do live in a society where we are supposed to be innocent unless, not until, unless proven guilty. Now, here's the thing. Him being charged was really unexpected to me. I did not expect him to be charged, right? It's almost impossible to get a rape charge in the UK. Almost impossible, right? We know, according to figures, 798,000 women in England and Wales, that's only England and Wales, that's not across the whole of the UK, are raped or sexually assaulted every year. That's 1 in 30 women, right? In contrast, only 70,000 of those 798,000 reported to police. And in the year ending September 2022, which is where we have the figures up to, the highest number was ever recorded, right? Most survivors simply don't report rape to the police. They don't, because it is often the accuser who is portrayed as the problem. We've seen it before. We've seen the slut shaming. Oh, how dare that person sleep around? And how for many years, accusers were allowed to be cross-examined by the accused. It was an absolutely appalling state of affairs. And again, I do believe that people must be seen as innocent unless proven guilty. And just because he has a certain history, but so there are things that we can talk about here, right? But the reality is, it is incredibly hard to bring a criminal charge in the UK, right? The CPS only bring 2 to 3% of cases, which of course is an absolute failure. There's no doubt about it. I made a video last year. I will put a link in the description after the live stream. In it, I tackled some of Russell's appalling history of addictions, including sex and drugs, as well as the absolute power he held for a period of time in British media. This guy was extremely powerful in British media. Trust me when I say that. This guy has never been on the outside. He has never been an alternative voice. And I wondered in the video whether Russell Brand had been allowed to rise so high precisely because his significant weaknesses had deemed him vulnerable to something like this. Because, of course, in recent years, even though Russell Brand was a Buddhist and a lefty, in recent years, he suddenly claimed to have found Jesus and moved over to the American Christian right, which is where there's lots of money. But the fact is, if you discredit the person, you also discredit the message. And I have to question why he was allowed to rise. And some people are like, oh, deep state are going after him. But why? What is it that Russell Brand has said that would make the deep state go after him? This man didn't speak up during C19. No, he didn't. He really didn't. And so I don't think he's quite the anti-establishment figure that some people like to make him out to be. And but you know what is clear is that he's so famous that many people have an opinion on him. And in the truth sphere, people are deeply, deeply divided. I'm sure that our commenters will be divided as well in the live chat and in the comments. And some have come to know Russell in the last few years. Well, there are others like me, for example, who have known about Russell Brand for absolutely decades. I spent a lot of my journalistic career in legacy media. Russell Brand was almighty. And his oversized ego is probably a narc. He certainly has a messiah complex, clearly got the better of him at times. And as I say, I recorded a video. I'll put a link in the description. And I'm only referring to what is already in the public domain. But Brand was a man with addictions and who routinely trespassed over boundaries, including, if I remember correctly, dressing up as Osama bin Laden while high on live TV. But he's a comedian, remember, so we should find him funny. The thing is, I don't. I never have. Neither do I believe he's being stitched up for speaking truth to power, because, as I say, he's just simply not doing that. He only started being vocal after much of the damage of C19 was done, because Brand, as the name says, is all about the brand, his. And also, Russell Brand supports other accused influencers. We're getting quite a display of them now, including Andrew Tate. When Andrew Tate, various stuff has come out about Andrew Tate, and Russell Brand tweeted about him recently and actually did a podcast about him, saying, whatever you think of Andrew Tate, he appeals to a lot of people and he's a vessel for a lot of ideas that cannot be repressed and need to be discussed. And there was A community note put on it. Context: Tate has been charged for sex acts with a minor. She was only 15. He was caught bribing her to lie to the police for him. That was one of the community notes that was attached to it on X. So just a roundup of current male influencers who are currently in a bit of bother. Russell Brand charged with 4 separate sex crimes. Lawrence Fox charged for posting an upskirting picture of a woman on X. James English charged with allegations of extensive domestic violence and has appeared in court. And Matthew Jury, lawyer for some British women, has thanked Robert Jenrick, Shadow Secretary, thanked for his support, because Robert Jenrick is saying that the Home Office should waste no time submitting a request to the Emirati authorities for Andrew Tate's extradition to the UK. Andrew Tate has now bobbed off to Dubai. And Robert Jenrick has said his alleged victims have been left in limbo for far too long. And Matthew Jury publicly thanked him for this, said, "Thank you, Robert Jenrick, for your support for our clients, Andrew Tate's alleged victims, as well as for all his other alleged victims. It means a great deal to them." So I just think that's interesting, because you have to question why people get involved in the truth movement. Because do you know what? It's so easy to hide yourself in the truth movement, isn't it? Because the moment that perhaps you might get attacked, you can always say, the big deep state, the Matrix is after me. That's what they always say. That's what they always say. And anyway, so Sean said Brand has never hidden his awful past and has always stated you cannot truly change unless you follow the 12 steps, which he has been pushing for many, many years. He's been pushing lots of things for many, many years, Sean. A Blue Nomad said 12 steps is a cult. So there you go. The interesting difference of opinion just in our live chat. Wonderful. And thank you. Oh, Rachel has reminded me about Joey Barton, of course, who was recently convicted for the brutal assault on his wife, including stamping on her head. Thank you, Rachel. Wow. And I'm proud to say that I haven't ever supported one of them, except James English, because I did appear on his podcast. But other than that, all the rest of them, just absolute. Let's just say I felt something. I felt something in my bones about them. Before we bring in our lovely John Hendon, I want to just address this issue. Let's have a look at this. This is fascinating. This is really, really fascinating stuff. I want to bring up this video. This is of Mark McDonald. This is Lucy Letby's new barrister after he had handed new evidence to the Criminal Case Review Commission. Check this out.
And so today I put in now 23 expert reports from 24 experts from across the realm, covering 8 separate countries. Those expert reports completely...
Oh, that's just gone off. Why is that just gone off? Well, oh, those expert reports, I'm going to have to... Sometimes this happens on StreamYard. You're going to play again for me? No, maybe not. Let me just try it again, actually. I'd like you to hear all of that. I'll take it to that point. Let me just... If I can... I'd like to, but no, I'm going to have to tell you what he said. So Mark McDonald, that's Letby's new barrister, as I say, he handed in new evidence to the CCRC, the Criminal Case Review Commission, on Thursday. He also handed in a separate 698-page report by 14 other experts, which he said found no evidence of deliberate harm. Of course, Lucy Letby, as many of you know, I don't believe that, I believe that that is an unsafe conviction. Lucy Letby is the former neonatal nurse who was convicted of murdering 7 babies and convicted of the attempted murder of a further 7. Awful, awful, awful stuff, obviously. But a number of reports have gone into the CCRC, including an 86-page report. And so I listened to the interview that he gave. Let me just find some of my notes. He said that what this is the findings of a panel of 14 specialists, which we know about, of course, including Dr. Xu Li. And the full report was delivered to him 2 weeks ago, has now been delivered to the CCRC. Of course, the CCRC has many problems, as we know. But what's interesting about the CCRC, and which Mark noted, was that Helen Pitcher had recently resigned from being head of the CCRC. So maybe the CCRC is now in a better position to actually make the changes necessary, because now they've got rid of the big boss. They can always like blame her for the problems that were in the CCRC. This might bode very, very well indeed for Lucy Letby. And what the barrister pointed out was that this is the largest review of neonatal care in the criminal justice system that has ever taken place. Big claim, but I believe him. 1,000 pages, a definitive look at what's taking place. And he pointed out that the lead prosecution witness not only wasn't a neonatologist, but he was a retired paediatrician and had been so for 15 years, right? Mark talked about how he went to experts, including Professor Xu Li, asked to look at evidence, and he was told, we will tell the world if we think you're wrong. We're going to look at this evidence, and if we believe Lucy Letby is guilty, we will tell the world that. And conversely, if we believe she's innocent, we will tell the world that. Well, they ended up coming down on the side of, this absolutely is a shaky conviction. This needs to be looked at again. At the most, a retrial. Many people are calling for her just to be released. But of course, it doesn't just work like that unless they were able to find something quite astonishing. And so what's happening now is that he's in a position, the barrister, of persuading the CCRC to take it back to the Court of Appeal, because you can't just take it straight back to the Court of Appeal. Unfortunately, you have to be referred by the CCRC, this utterly toothless organization. And the barrister was talking about how he has deep concerns about the CCRC. And one of them, he said, which was gobsmacking to listen to, was he said he has a fear, I'm paraphrasing him, but he has a fear that they won't take it because they get concerned about the appeal court saying, you shouldn't have sent that over to us. That's not what the CCRC should be about. He said he felt that the CCRC can be a bit deferential to the Court of Appeal, scared of getting it wrong and being told so. This is a toothless organisation if they're scared to submit for fear of rejection. Anyway, as I say, head Helen Pitcher has recently left. So we shall see. I think this is going to be really interesting. Let me read some of your comments before I bring in John. And Lenticular Cloud said she needs to be exonerated for her own safety and the trust prosecuted. Well, of course, there is now additional investigation taking place, isn't there, regarding issues of manslaughter at that place, which is the Countess of Chester Hospital. We, of course, did a live stream the other week outside the Thirlwell inquiry. Here's an image of Lady Justice Thirlwell. You can't actually hear her. I haven't got any volume there, but that was her in the final week. I was outside. I went inside, watched until lunchtime, which was about 45 minutes. Absolutely clear it was a done deal. Lady Justice Thirlwell has refused to pause the Thirlwell inquiry, which is not so much looking at Lucy Letby, but how it was all allowed to happen and the environment around her. And yes, so there she is, Lady Justice Thirlwell. And of course, this was the moment that Lucy Letby was arrested. I can never kind of get my head around this, what took place. Her face looks so anguished, actually, when you see her coming out. I think this is a really kind of important clip. And yeah, that was when she was arrested. They were absolutely determined to get her. I'm in no doubt whatsoever that the police, once they'd gathered together everything that they needed, they were absolutely determined to get her. And in fact, one of the lead police chiefs has now come out, given a statement. Detective Superintendent Paul Hughes, he's not happy. He said the investigation into the actions of Lucy Letby, the trial process and medical experts continues to face scrutiny and criticism, much of it ill-informed and based on very partial knowledge of the facts and totality of evidence presented at court and at the Court of Appeal. He claims that this case has been rigorously and fairly tested through 2 juries and subsequently scrutinized by 2 sets of appeal court judges. Yeah, but the problem is if you're operating with poor information from the start, you could have 40,000 appeal court judges looking at it. They can only adjudicate on what they're given. That's the bottom line. And how are you doing it all? How are you doing all? No, I don't. So no police car. Good actor. There was a police car that they put her in, right? And they're all called Lord or Lady Justice. Yes, they are indeed. Yes, they are indeed. Right. I want to bring in a dear friend of the show, and he is a dear friend, and he's somebody that I, as you all know, have a great deal of time for. I trust and respect him. We've got so much more to cover, by the way. And let's bring him in. Let's bring him in now. Let's not waste a second. Here he is, John Hendon, psychotherapist and author. Good morning, John. How are you? Oh, oops, hold on a second. Hello, John. Oh, you've got to unmute for me.
Yes, hello, Sonia. Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm fine, thanks, albeit a little stiff after doing some extensive gardening over the weekend.
Oh, well, see, no, so I started, John, because, you know, you do, right? And then I remembered that my daughter's friend has a brilliant gardener boyfriend who came around before, charges like £25 an hour to do a wizard job, right? And I just thought, I'm bringing him back in to do the spring cleanup. That's what we're doing. And so, yeah, but it's lovely out there, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit chilly, bit nippy, though.
But, you know, if you're working, digging with spades and shovels, you know, you need fairly cool temperatures.
Yes, exactly indeed. So John, you're back to talk to us about an interesting alternative approach. And anybody who knows John around here, John spent decades in the NHS and has done everything he can ever since to enable people to heal away from the medical framework, which is really fantastic, really important work. Of course, as you can imagine, John's been in all manner of trouble for doing that. But John, you are now spreading the word all over the world. I'm even surprised that you're able to be here today. You're so busy.
Well, yes, it's a delight, actually. I think last tally, 24 countries across 5 continents now over the last 25 years. So it is fantastic.
Love it. Love it. Spread the good word, John.
Yeah. And it's funny because last fortnight ago, I had the privilege of talking about the history of psychiatry and mental health treatments and emotional distress approaches to the Glenside Hospital Museum in Bristol, which is one of 2 mental hospitals that used to serve the whole city. And they wanted me to do the history of Barrow Hospital, which is a hospital I worked in the beginning of my career all those decades ago. So it was quite surreal.
Wow. All coming round again.
It was.
Jackie says, John looks the least likeliest of troublemakers. Yeah, well, so was the quiet ones, Jack, right?
Oh, yes.
Always the quiet ones you got to watch out for. So it is wonderful to have you with us, John. And I want to look at something which is different. I'm sure many of our viewers will not be aware of them. The Soteria houses. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, or Soteria houses. Yes. And this is inspired to talk about this today from watching a Mad in America town hall discussion that comprised of 4 experts who worked within Soteria houses. Now, just to say a little bit about them, soteria is from the Greek, and it means deliverance, salvation, or preservation. And they're ways of looking after people who are sort of having psychotic type experiences from the age of 18 to 35. And they go into a house which might accommodate between 5 and 8 residents. And it's a way of being with people as they're going through their journey back to health, getting their head back to normal, rather than going into a psychiatric institution. As you know, I've worked in many where there's coercion, it's an authoritarian regime, and patients are reduced to diagnostic labels, and they're done unto with medication and other things that happen in those places. So it's a refreshing alternative. And they were talking about this, and it was about an hour and a half discussion, and it was absolutely brilliant. So I thought, right, got to bring this to Wake Up with Sonia.
Let's do it. So are these all over the world, or are they just in the UK? Where are they?
Well, they're in Switzerland, Germany, Hungary, Finland, and America. And there was one here in the 1970s, but due to funding being withdrawn and they couldn't find the right premises, it disappeared. And incidentally, you know, this approach is a big threat to big psychiatry and big psychopharma, because it doesn't involve drugs, apart from some of them have very little input from medication, perhaps for a short period of time, which is fine. But they're not run by professional staff from the traditional multi-professional team, of psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health nurses, occupational therapists, art therapists, etc. Staff are chosen on the basis of their qualities of interacting with people on a one-to-one basis.
Well, that's already different, isn't it? That already sets it apart. And I find it astonishing that we've only had one and we don't anymore. A halfway house is probably not the right description, because that sounds almost like they've been involved in criminality when they haven't necessarily, right? But it sounds like exactly the type of alternative we need. I work, for example, with adults with learning difficulties, and they lived in a house where there was one big house where they were taken care of. And then the house opposite had also been bought by the same trust, where there were 5 or 6 who were also kind of like independently living. It's a similar type of thing in some respects. And a lot can be gained from that, right? But
yes.
Like so much can be gained from. Tell us what the amount of stuff that can be gained from that level of independence.
Well, so much has been gained. I mean, there were the houses that have been running, they've done some research. This is an evidence-based approach, and of course everything in the NHS has to be evidence-based. Now this is an evidence-based approach, and so they've gathered evidence over the years from these other houses, and what seems to happen that people only need to stay there between 6 and 8 weeks, and then they can go back and function in life. But don't forget, they came in with what we used to label as, early onset schizophrenic symptoms, or manic depressive or acute schizophrenia, etc. But these are experiences like, delusional ideas, auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, etc. And it's found that gradually, by getting alongside people, they can gradually work through things and work through the. Remember, I've mentioned before that all symptoms have meaning. And so to help the person find the meanings behind these symptoms and work through them. And it's very much the emphasis is on being with the person on their journey and relating well. And the houses are chosen because they have a large lounge, maybe with a fireplace, and a huge kitchen dining area. And most of the conversations occur around the fireside in the evening and in the kitchen diner when meals are being prepared, etc. So this is normal interactions between people, helping people recover from their emotional distress.
Now, obviously, one of the things that you just said there, the emphasis is on being with, and that's as opposed to doing to, right? What does that mean exactly, doing to? What is that?
Well, doing to, give you a classic. When I worked in mental hospitals, it was the patient would be admitted. They would be clerked in, documented, fully documented. Then the admitting psychiatrist would come up with a diagnostic label at the end of that. And it might be, well, you've got anxiety and depression. So we've got some medication to help you here.
Right.
And so write them up for some medication. And that would start within 3 or 4 hours. And then the patient would be told that they've got some occupational therapy to go to. And they would be directed here and there. And very much it's sort of us and them.
Right.
So us, we were up here, and the poor patient was down here, and it was that skewed relationship. And I got into trouble very early on when I worked in the mental health system, because I worked on a level playing field with people. I related to them as a person, as a fellow human being. And my colleagues, certainly the most institutional staff, saw that as a threat to the system, because I was relating on a level playing field.
See, it's ridiculous, because we're being repeatedly told that we need to change the NHS, that we need to reform it, right? This would be wouldn't this be a perfect way to do so, actually?
Oh, Sonia, it would. And it's so much cheaper. The cost of having someone in a psychiatric inpatient unit for 2 months, you're talking about thousands upon thousands. Yet, you know, in a Soteria house for the same period of time, much less cost, and of course they come out of it recovered at the end. And the point made about this Mad in America town hall discussion was that not only does the psychiatric system cost much more, outcomes are very poor. I mean, they're about 20% at most. Most people coming out, you know, the other 80% come out with stigma, with long-term dependency on the system. They've lost their job, so they're dependent on other systems as well to survive. You know, the costs, the comparison is minuscule for Soteria House approach rather than big psychiatry and their inpatient system.
Now, I'm going to ask some, they're probably very, you know, awkward questions because I'm trying to work my way around this because it sounds fantastic. But then so we're dealing with people, obviously, who are dealing with like serious mental health issues, right? And
yes, they have psychotic or, you know, they have delusional ideas. They're not dangerous. They have delusional ideas. They have visual hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, and sometimes what we call olfactory hallucinations. They smell things that are not right, you know.
Right. So having worked with adults with learning difficulties, and there were 2 or 3 who were there, and my heart broke for them, but they scared the life out of me. One actually trapped me in a corner, and I've talked about him before, and I ended up leaving. I'm sure I had PTSD because he threatened to like rip my eyeballs out, pee all over them, stomp on them, do horrible things to me, right? And so I'm wondering, in a situation like this, because obviously a psychiatric unit, they can immediately medicate them if things get a little bit hairy, right? And not saying that I necessarily agree with that, but in a situation like this, which kind of like moves away from the medical model, how safe are these houses generally? Because there's a lot of people with a lot of issues in them, aren't they? Obviously.
Yes, and that's a good question. I mean, you know, it's not to completely replace everything that's there already. I mean, there's a research project going on at the moment, and I'll say a bit about that. But, you know, the Broadmoors and the Ramptons will still be there. You know, there are some dangerous people out there.
The more serious, okay.
Very serious. I mean, I've been to Broadmoor on a visit, and, you know, a lot of the people I met there and was told about, I would not want them to be released ever because of their intent to kill and dismember people. But that's a totally different category. The thing is with the houses, people are selected. So they meet certain criteria for them to be admitted. So obviously, if they were dangerous in any way, they would not be appropriate. But I give an example, actually, from this program I saw. There was one fella, and there was fellows really behaving quite violent in the house and shouting and screaming. All the staff were outside. And so he went in and he sat down by this fella and he said, he just sat quietly with him. And he said, I feel there's a lot of fear in this building. And the person said, you feel it too? He said, yeah, I feel this fear. He said, yeah. He said, I wonder what it's about, you know. And they just sort of had a normal conversation. Now, if that was an acute psychiatric ward, 6 of us would have been called together from different parts of the hospital, and we would have jumped on that person.
Right.
With our white coats on, and one would have had a needle and it would go straight in and they would be completely sedated and out for 2 or 3 days, you know, and totally, you know, in a vegetative state. So it's a whole different way of working with people. So
wow.
Obviously the criteria of selection have to be important.
Well, so that I'd like to get to. Yes, go on, John. I'll follow your lead.
I was going to say the research project that's going on at the moment. In March, so last month, there was a press release from the Greater Manchester area. There are some researchers who are exploring the Soteria approach as an alternative to psychiatric inpatient treatment in the UK. And it's run by or led by Dr. Kate Alsop, who's a research fellow at Greater Manchester Mental Health NHS Foundation Trust. And it's co-run by Rita Long, who is the chair of the Soteria network in the UK. and they're going to be visiting these other centres in other parts of the world I've mentioned. They're going to be gathering data to show that this is an effective approach, and to have them run alongside the current NHS inpatient provision, at least for the time being.
I mean, that's fantastic news. I immediately think about the opposition to that, of course.
Oh, yes.
I mean, NHS, big pharma, we all know the crossover there and the problems with it. So, but this is an alternative. But I mean, I am interested in the kind of staff that they bring into these houses, because they're not necessarily the same type of staff that would be on a psychiatric wing, right? These people are chosen in a completely different way, right?
Yes, they're chosen in a bit similar way. I remember when I was an NHS manager, I commissioned an intensive treatment unit, and that's for people who are really very disturbed in the mental health system. And I chose them. Well, first of all, I chose the ward manager. She was someone I worked with in a previous chapter of my career, and she was a lovely person, and she related to people who are very distressed and shouting and running around screaming, and she had a marvelous way of calming them down, and by just talking to them in a normal way, one-to-one, human to human. And I recruited her as my team leader, if you like, and then she and I recruited the other senior staff to that unit. And then they recruited other assistants, etc. And that unit ran very calmly because we chose the right staff. But that's unusual. I mean, I was a different type of manager, and most would employ, strong arm, 6 feet across the shoulders type staff to manage a unit like that, but I wouldn't have it. Anyway, so this Soteria houses, they're looking for staff, and it might be some who've had their own experiences when they were younger, that they got through.
That would be great.
Yes.
They know the terrain. They understand what's going on.
They know the terrain, and they've been there, and they can relate. And of course, when someone, I remember when I went for counselling in my earlier days, to resolve some of my childhood survival stuff. And I looked at, towards the end of the first session, I looked at my therapist. She knew what I was thinking. Said, "I know what you're thinking." Said, "Yes, I know the territory you're going to talk about." And I knew she knew. So, you recruit staff like that, then people who are coming in, they know that they know.
Mel's is asking how to spell this. It's Soteria, Soteria.
Yeah, and that is a cue, Sonia, for maybe a chart.
We love it. Yes, please.
Right. So what I was talking about with the program I watched, called a town hall discussion. It's run by Mad in America, so madinamerica.com. And Robert Whitaker is the mainspring of that organization. And it's fantastic. And you can just put in the search bar Soteria, and it will come up. And you can find out more about it there. And there's a Soteria London site here, .co.uk, which some people might like to have a look at. They're looking into the possibility. And this is the UK, soterianetwork.org.uk.
Brilliant. I'm going to put both of those in the description so people can check them out. John, this really could revolutionize the way that we deal with people's psychological issues. It literally could change it. The way you're describing it, I would be quite happy when I was actually dealing with my own mental health issues. I would have been quite happy to have spent some time in an environment like that a long time ago now. But I absolutely was not going to go anywhere near a psychiatric unit when I was struggling in my 30s. Absolutely not. And because we are so repelled by it, and all the stuff that you've had to say about how our psychiatric units are run, how people are sent far away from home, the fallout from it, the amount of people who actually have died as a consequence of going through that system. We have to change, John.
We have to change. And looking back on this in 50 years' time, what's happening at the moment and has been happening throughout the whole of my career will be seen as barbaric as putting people in chains and shackles and putting them in concrete, or stone cells or whatever.
Right, or giving them a frontal lobotomy. We look
Give them a
back on that now,
frontal lobotomy.
don't we? And we go, God, well, how could we ever have treated people like that? But the way we treat them now is basically just to kind of reduce everything about them, right? We inject them and we reduce everything about them. One of the things that you said, which have always stuck with me, John, is about how, and honestly, I will repeat this again, and that is, if you are on any medication, this is not in any way advocating that you quit. You need expert help for that, right? Absolute expert help. And John will be the first person to tell you that. But the one thing that's always stuck with me that John has said is about how your moods get dampened down. So you can't actually, even if on that medication, it's able to kind of like balance you out a little bit, you won't feel joy. You won't be able to feel joy, right, John?
No, because what it does, it dampens all emotions. So it's designed to dampen the negative emotions like grief, despair, hopelessness, shame, anxiety, etc. But it also dampens the good ones, joy, happiness, wonder, excitement, love, that makes us human. And the whole bit, we have to have the negative emotions, we have to have the positive emotions. That's what being alive is all about. And just an aside, I saw a dear friend of ours 2 months ago or so. Husband sadly died before his time, and she was clearly on heavy duty antidepressants, and there was nothing there. There was no, she was just like a wet blanket over the whole.
Right. And we have to be able to, be upset as much as we have to be able to be joyous, right? And grieving, that is a whole process attached to grieving. You need to be able to experience it, because the moment you dampen it down, it'll only emerge later. I know all of this from, personal experience. Yeah. John, anything else you want to add before you leave us today? Because I think the other thing I just want to say quickly, and that is there any way at all that you can get involved in perhaps this kind of attempt that they're attempting in Manchester? And I don't know whether you've put in anything to the NHS about it, the importance of these, or anything like that.
Well, I think anyone can get in touch with the researchers. If you explore, let's see, probably look at the Greater Manchester Mental Health NHS Trust and put in Soteria House Research or something, get in touch with the researchers, because if there are people who are interested, and you can look at this site here, and there's lots of energy there. When Lucinda Lidstone and I were running a campaign against psychiatric drug abuse, we had 2 or 3 people from Soteria UK get in touch with us and give us information and say, we're on your side, we're with you in this, so, and I think there'll be a gathering momentum.
Yes.
And interestingly, one of the commentators on this Mad in America program I saw, he said that he was running a Soteria house in the States. I forget which state it was. And he went on 2 weeks holiday, and he came back, and the National Institute of Mental Health had closed it down by withdrawing the funding and burying his research data.
It makes it sound like they don't want us to get well, John. That's what it makes it sound like, right?
Big psychopharma.
There's no profit.
They are.
There's no profit in good health.
Psychiatry.
Right, exactly.
So just a few other points to mention. I mean, what we need is 1,000 of them nationwide, at least. Wow. 1,000 Soteria houses. And you think of the billions that go into mental health services, into these psychiatric systems, which I've been a full part of in every aspect of them over my career. The cost and the waste and the wasted lives that come out the other end, the cost of Soteria, 1,000 Soteria houses could, in my just back of an envelope calculation, could be run at 1/100th of the cost of the current setup.
Wow, but no profit, and that, I think that's key, and that's what we have to start overcoming, because we're hearing from Keir Starmer and the Health Secretary Wes Streeting, oh, people are being overdiagnosed with mental health issues. We have to get people back into work. Well, we have to also make sure that people are well enough to work. And this is, I think, a brilliant and as I say, I'm reluctant to call it halfway house because it's not, but it feels like a solution, because psychiatric wings don't feel like a solution. They feel like they're a holding bay rather than anything else.
They're holding bay, they're persecutory in many aspects, and they're labeling and they're disabling, because people then become disabled as a human being and are functioning at a lower level. And because the stigma, if someone's come out of an institution, their friends and family sort of look at them a bit different, they wouldn't if they're in a Soteria house, it would be totally different. It would be like they've gone away on a holiday, to a holiday in a big sort of shared home.
So we would also be doing something about the stigma attached as well. There are so many advantages for us pursuing this. Literally, it could revolutionize the way we're dealing with things. If we want to be seen as a humane society, and obviously our leaders are far from it, but the people still are the people. And for the most part, I think this is something that people would actually agree on. Certainly after the last 5 years, John, we've seen what's happened, that following the whole C-19 madness, the sheer volume of people who are no longer working because of mental health problems.
I know.
This would help, wouldn't it? All of this stuff would help, wouldn't it?
It would. Breaks my heart, and they're living lives. Well, they're not living, they're existing, and they have no meaning and purpose, or little meaning and purpose, compared to those of us who are working and contributing to society. We're contributing our taxes, and we're more fulfilled than those who are just existing. And all of us and all of your viewers know, I would suggest, at least 3 people in their sphere, in their communities, who are in that category you've just described.
I bet indeed. John, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I feel really uplifted. I really do, because I feel that this is such a positive solution. And I do get deeply concerned about the sheer volume of people who are out there and who are struggling mentally. I really do. So this would be fantastic, really fantastic. Before you go, you've got to have at least one of your books on the table before you. I refuse to believe.
Which would you like?
Both. If you've got them both, put them both up.
Put them both up. Right. Well, as many of your viewers know, I have 2 specialist areas. One which has been achieving zero suicide throughout the world, where I have these 24 countries I've been training in. And this is this one, Preventing Suicide, the Solution-Focused Approach. And throughout the world, in teams and individual caseloads, they say, since we did your training, we haven't had a single suicide. But big psychiatry and big pharma are not interested in this approach.
Oh, I'm that shocked.
Yeah.
But we are.
Quite.
The people are interested. And at the end of the day, right, we have to remind them that we're the ones who hold the power. We hold the purse strings as taxpayers. We need to start asserting this right. And the other book, John.
And the other one is, my other specialist area is severe trauma and stress recovery, and that includes childhood abuse and neglect. And this is a handbook for both it's for workers, whether they're professionals or they're lay workers. And many lay workers I train nowadays use this book. And also the people who have experienced it have it by the bedside, etc. So it's called What It Takes to Thrive: Techniques for Severe Trauma and Stress Recovery.
We love it, John. We absolutely love it. And just so you know, Soul Sound, I'm already lining up John for the next time he's back on again, because people are like, he needs to be more regular. And it's true. You do need to be more regular with us. We absolutely love this, starting our month, April, off with a bang, even though we're on the 7th now. John, lovely to have you with us today. Anything else that has gone unsaid?
I think that's about it, Sonia. Just next time I'll be talking about community mental health and emotional well-being hubs as a sort of something that would go alongside Soteria houses and other approaches. So so that's another exciting thing to talk about. And again, it doesn't cost much, and it can save tens of millions of pounds, not only for us in the UK, but also all other countries across the Western world.
A bright and positive way forward. We love the sound of that, everybody. This is, as you know, John Hendon, psychotherapist and author, and all-round good egg. Lovely to see you, John. Take good care of yourself. See you soon. Have a great week. And
you, Sonia. Bye now.
Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful to have John with us. And he's fabulous. I love John. They do, Derek. And whoop, whoop. Yep. Don't worry, we will, because John was somebody who was on my show Rise, and he was actually weekly then. So I take your point, people, partly to do with how busy he is as well. It has to be said. But I feel positive from that. Indeed. Right. Let us return to what I was working through. Now, so we looked at Dan Norris. We looked at Rupert Lowe. We've looked at Russell Brand. What haven't we looked at from the early part that I wanted to make sure I've got it? We looked at the Lucy Letby situation, and please, I must be very, very clear. And that is, I only believe it to be an unsafe conviction. I make no really big statements about anything. I know some people are like, she's absolutely innocent. I don't say that. That isn't necessarily my position, but it is clear to me that there was a problem with the conviction. So no matter what the police chief says. So just to be clear about that. And this is never, ever about disrespecting the grieving parents. Not ever. It is about getting justice for them if they have been denied justice up to this point. I know what I wanted to talk about next. This whole business. What the hell is going on here? So Virginia Roberts, so she's now reverted to calling herself as opposed to her married name. And so obviously we covered some of this, I think, last Wednesday. She is probably the most famous alleged Epstein trafficking victim. She was paid an undisclosed sum, said to be paid by the Queen, although it was reported to be around £12 million. And that was for a lawsuit that she had started against Prince Andrew, and the Queen didn't want all of that ugly legal stuff around her Jubilee, and so she paid it off. But I don't think it's only just to do with the Jubilee. I think that maybe it might have revealed much more about the Queen's favourite son than she'd wanted to. Anyway, Virginia had posted this picture a week ago now, last Sunday, and said, described being involved in a bus collision, describing how she had gone into some kind of renal failure and how she only had, 4 days to live. So that was last week. Since then, one person after another has come out and called BS on it, right? Including the bus driver, including parents of the children on the bus, and even a woman who is employed to work for Virginia said she's not taking the fall for her. And her family, Virginia's family, have got involved trying to disentangle her from the mess. And her brother clarified that the 4 days to live claim, saying that Virginia had been told that by doctors, that she would have died in that time frame if she did not receive treatment. But that's not what that post said, right? And Mr. Roberts further went on to say that his sister's injuries weren't solely caused by the bus crash. Let's be clear, she never stated in the bus accident the cause of all her other injuries. Well, anyway, so what's happened is that Virginia's spokesperson has given a statement to US People magazine. That's a celebrity magazine. She appears to be blaming her husband for these bruises, right? That's what she appears to be doing. So let me just see. So the spokeswoman said that Virginia is marginally better, but still in serious condition after undergoing treatment at a hospital in Perth. So the question is Virginia a fantasist, or is she desperate for attention? That she would over-exaggerate what happened, or did something really untoward happen to her? There's more. So this statement that I'm talking about said that Virginia said, I was able to fight back against Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, who abused and trafficked me, but I was unable to escape the domestic violence in my marriage until recently. After my husband's latest physical assault, I can no longer stay silent. Well, that's just also weird, because the initial post was very much about being hit when the bus coming at you at 70 miles per hour and all of this. She ended the statement by saying, again, I thank everyone for their for their support, rather. I have faith that justice will prevail. So she's blaming her husband. This is curious, as both are due in court. Virginia for breaching a family violence restraining order, and her estranged husband for inadequate storage of guns. So all of that is going to be taking place this month. I think Virginia is actually due in court on Wednesday. So maybe we'll have an update on Wednesday to find out more about that. But something's off. Something is off. Now, it's no... many people around here know that I've been questioning Virginia's story for a very long time. And I don't believe that this is the most important story or situation that happened around Jeffrey Epstein. I believe that there was a gang of females who became the official narrative. And as I showed last week from an interview I did with Molly Skye Brown, they didn't want to admit anybody else into their inner circle who might be coming with a slightly different story. And Molly Skye Brown has always maintained that the image of Virginia with Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell, which was taken in Ghislaine Maxwell's Mayfair home, Belgravia, was fake. So I don't know. It just seems that they are changing the narrative as they go along and as the public backlash happened. And also apparently that was supposed to be for a private Facebook post. So are you misleading people on your private Facebook then? I don't know who put it on Instagram, right? She hasn't taken it down. And it all seems a bit weird. So she's estranged from her husband. She seems to be estranged from her 3 children. I'll tell you how I read it. My opinion, we're allowed opinions, right? In courts of law. My opinion when I read that post was she wants, for some reason, her family to be concerned. And I didn't actually know the details about her being estranged from her husband and her children, but that's what I thought. She talked about how she wanted to see her children again before she kind of left this planet and all that sort of stuff. I think that was a post of desperation, actually. But we shall see. Maybe this is, as she's trying to now lead us into the idea that this was her having been attacked by her husband. Well, that goes back to January, if that happened, and not just recently. Why is she only just posting about it? Is it because she's due in court? And Virginia knows about how the media works. If anybody knows, Virginia knows how the media works. And she probably thought, oh my God, it's all coming out. I'm, being taken to court for breaching this restraining order. It involves my children. It looks bad. I'm just wondering, any ideas about it? It's odd. I don't think she was able to post anything. Well, who posted it? Looks too blurred. I think it was taken across the room. She's lying down, not propped up, but it's posted on her Instagram account, right? I actually think that this picture was absolutely taken with her permission, because otherwise, why would she have posted it? And I think that it is a performative picture. That's my opinion. And you've all got opinions there, right? It is bizarre, actually. Marco questions the motives of people when they do these things in public. I hear you. Right. We shall see. So maybe Wednesday we can have an update on that, beauties. Maybe we can. And I want to talk about this. This says something wrong here. Okay. Now, let me be clear. This is Lucy Connolly. Okay. We saw the headlines over the weekend. Lucy Connolly was the mother who was jailed over what was seen as the racist migrant hotel tweet. This followed the Southport stabbings. And so obviously last July 2024, mass stabbing occurred in Southport. 3 little girls were murdered by Axel Rudakabana. And immediately in the wake of that absolute tragedy, that absolute devastating tragedy, people were very hurt, very upset, very angry. And in part because they just felt this is the icing on the cake. This is what we've been warning about to do with mass immigration and all of this. And actually, Axel Rudakabana was actually born in England, but his parents had immigrated here. But anyway, Lucy Connolly, she wrote a tweet and she deleted it within hours, but she was jailed for 31 months for, according to the judge, inciting racial hatred with social media posts. And she's been trying to secure a release on temporary license to see her daughter. She has a young child, right? We know these are political arrests. Okay. Let me be clear here. Lucy Connolly and I would not get on. We would not be friends. The insight that I've had into her mind is not where I'm coming from. And I would not necessarily support it. It's just kind of like ugly and nasty. But she's being punished above and beyond, right? We can, all of us, think of a dozen cases where people were given suspended sentences, most of them to do with the abuse of children and the downloading of child abuse images, which are absolutely a trillion times worse than what Lucy Connolly posted, as much as I found what she said to be reprehensible, right? They are, without a shadow of a doubt, there are much worse people being let go than Lucy Connolly. Anyway, she was hoping that she would be able to secure some kind of release on license. And I was reading through the judgment. It's a very interesting judgment, by the way. And her judge was the Honourable Judge Melbourne Inman Casey, recorder of Birmingham. And the judgment talks about how she pleaded guilty to the offence of distributing material with the intention of stirring up racial hatred. Part of the problem is, as Colin Sutton, ex-cop who was on the other week with us, part of the problem is these people were receiving terrible, terrible advice. Terrible advice. Why were people just being told, admit your guilt, right? Instead of actually fighting the case. These people were receiving terrible advice. Mikey thinks they're clones playing parts, right? And anyway, so the judge said, when you published these words, you were well aware of how volatile the situation was. As everyone is aware, that volatility led to serious disorder in a number of areas of the country where mindless violence was used. And this brings me back to some of the middle-class tweeters who tweeted immediately. And although they were subject to police investigation, nothing ever happened with them because they could afford decent representation. This is part of the problem. Right. This is part of the problem, is that either the lack of decent representation or these people being advised just to plead guilty. Right. Anyway, it's a horrible. The whole thing, I think, is actually an attack on her. It's wrong. And people, can I just say that people cheering for her continued imprisonment are being short-sighted in their hatred of her, because the state will come for them next. If you think it ends with her, you've got another thing coming. Right. Her imprisonment is absolutely a political one. It's designed to send a chilling effect to the rest of us. The UK's free speech is absolutely, unquestionably under attack like never before under Keir Starmer, the word harmer. Yes, he is. Yeah, Lucy Connolly's tweet was against the law. It was actually against the law, right? I can see that. But she deleted it. Right. At the most, she should have had community service. She has a young child. She has a sick husband. Right. But if it was down to me, she wouldn't probably even have had community service necessarily. She'd have probably had a caution. Right. But this is not actually about Lucy Connolly. You know, it's about the attack on all people in the UK. So cheering for her continued imprisonment when she's actually should be out on license now is utterly appalling. Apparently, the governor of the prison is now considering it. Let me find a quote from the governor. Said a spokesman, so she's at HMP Drake Hall in Staffordshire. A spokesman said decisions on release on temporary license and home detention curfew are made following uncompromising risk assessments to prioritize public safety. This woman is not a danger to the public. I don't believe for a second she is. And these are discretionary schemes, and each case is rigorously scrutinized, considering the severity of the offence, the prisoner's conduct, and the potential impact on victims and the community. And Lucy Connolly is seeking to appeal her sentence with a hearing on May the 15th. Marco says, this is about our civil liberties. Our voices are quickly being taken away. It's only going to get worse. Hunger Games is coming. Will be under martial law soon. Yes, Stephen, oftentimes, true. They are using her as an example, says Jan, to other people to keep quiet. And I believe that. I believe that she was used as an example. And that's why I do understand when people say this is a psyop. I understand that, right? When you look at her background, she comes from a political background. Her husband's political, right? I understand why people say that. There's lots of cards there. And Jackie says she's also got a dead son. I was not aware of that. This is getting worse by the second. It's certainly a fiery month so far. Beware of emotions running high. Yes, Crafty Kim, we're in the month of Aries. Do not mess around. Do not mess around. Anyway, I do think that's whether she's a psyop or not. The point is to scare the rest of us into silence, and it's working. There are less people on social media this time this year than there was this time last year. Reality facts. I want to talk about former financial man, millionaire, and East Londoner, Gary Stevenson. I hear a lot about him. A lot. And you know what? Coming from a similar background, I want to like him. I really want to like him. And you know what? He makes a lot of sense. And I listened to one of his videos yesterday, and in many respects, it was spot on. And then he hit me with something. And I was like, no, Gary, wait, no, we can't be going there. And, you know, one of the things that he was talking about, this is a video about the power of Elon Musk. And one of the things that he was talking about was how politically corrupt our world is now, and how politicians are wooed over by wealthy donors and lobbyists. And all of that is absolutely spot on what he was saying. And we know it's real, whether it's Donald Trump or Boris Johnson. We know this. Absolutely. They have been bought and paid for. And he was talking about how billionaires, not voters, have the say in what happens and who can influence our politics. Again, I totally agreed with him. And I'm going to quote him directly, and then I want to show you a clip where I didn't agree with him. But this is where I agreed with him. He said, as inequality has increased, the taxpayer, ordinary families have become poorer. The super rich have become richer, and you have basically found yourself in the same situation that Latin Americans and Africans have been in for a long period of time. You cannot compete anymore for ownership of your politicians with the super rich. And I thought he's absolutely right. Our politicians are bought. Now, however they're bought, whether they're bought by big pharmaceuticals, loads of politicians who are on the board of pharmaceutical companies and private healthcare companies, or whether they're bought by countries, loads of politicians are bought by Israel, for one example. No doubt about it. Donald Trump clearly bought by Elon Musk. I mean, these things are absolutely transparent and absolutely apparent. And I thought spot on, and he articulates it very well. Now, then he started talking about the media. Now, this is an area I know very, very well, right? And I want to play you that clip. I hope it plays. If not, I'm going to re-upload it to play. But anyway, have a listen to what he says about media and see if you can spot what I spotted.
It's your media as well. Now, if we consider the media, if you work as a journalist, you need to be paid. Most people need to be paid. They've got to pay the rent. They've got to pay their bills. There's two ways you can be paid as a journalist, right? You can sell journalism, sell news to the people, or you can sell your services to the rich and say, if you pay me, I will sell stories that promote the ideas that you want to promote. And, you know, if you are an American watching this channel, you'll be very aware of where that ends up. You end up with extremely biased media. Their job is not to tell you the truth. Their job is to sell a certain story for you because they get paid by very rich people who want you to believe certain things. So this is the effect of inequality. This is the effect.
And he's right. This is the effect of inequality. But did anybody spot what I spotted? And that is, Gary is not really speaking truth to power, because it turns out he's not calling out the British media. He said, if there's any Americans watching this, you can see what happens with your media. It's kind of like bought. Gary, what about British media? Or is it because British media have very fulsomely and wholeheartedly embraced you? And obviously you're on Question Time, you're all across mainstream media, but you cannot not call out British media, Gary, because that is when I will start to wonder whether you are controlled opposition. British media is as bought as American media. To suggest that American media is the only place where media is bought is astonishing. And that disappointed me, because I'm wondering whether it's that same old thing. And that is, you get 80% of great stuff that's being said by an individual and 20% of stuff that is absolute propaganda. And what he said there is propaganda. He cannot be that ignorant about British media. British media is owned by also the same people as America, like Murdoch as one example, right? And then you have like the Barclay brothers, and then obviously Daily Mail is Lord, can't remember his name, but it's a very, very small circle of people. It's absolutely bought. That is what any journalist who is employed by mainstream media, unless they're a freelancer and they are being commissioned on like individual items, that's a whole different thing. But if you are employed by the mainframe that is mainstream media, whether it's in the UK or the US, you will write what you are asked to write. And that troubled me. And I didn't like that. I did not like that. That concerned me, because he's literally not calling out the very media that has embraced him. Worrying. He was, Noreen said he's not. He was using America as an obvious example, in my opinion. But Noreen, why didn't he use the UK? Because that would have been much more relevant. He's literally primarily speaking to a British audience, right? So why didn't he say, look, in the UK, you know for a fact, look what happened around C-19. Why not? Why not any of that? He's certainly knowledgeable enough. So to use America tells me that I have to keep my beady little eyes on him, unfortunately. And like I say, I want to like him. I want to like him. I really do. And just in case you're bored, you can always grass your children up to Prevent. Prevent, of course, is the kind of like anti-terrorism initiative. And Metropolitan Police have now come out, and they're saying that if you're a parent and you're noticing changes in your children's behavior and you see them becoming withdrawn, spend more time in the bedroom, and you could say, well, that's every teenager, but there's something more, then report them to Prevent. Grass your children up to Prevent for being teenagers. We've got to be really careful here. We've got to be careful here. So I don't know enough about his work, MB, to know that he's actually commented on immigration. I just heard that because I was like in total agreement with what he was saying about the corruption of members of parliament. Total agreement, but a total disagreement with what he was saying about media. But the jury's still out for me. Jury's still out. So yeah, parents, if you're bored, grass your children up to Prevent. I am joking, of course. Absolutely joking. Thoroughly joking. New charges for Puff Daddy Diddy on Friday, hit with 2 new criminal charges, including sex trafficking and engaging in prostitution, just a month before he's set to go on trial in New York in May. His legal team said these are not new allegations or new accusers. These are the same individuals, former long-term girlfriends who were involved in consensual relationships. This was their private sex life defined by consent, not coercion. Of course, Puffy has denied all allegations against him. A grand jury had indicted him last year on charges of racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution. And these 2 new charges bring the federal charges against him to 5. And of course, then there are all the civil charges that he's also facing and dealing with as well. And a significant portion of the most severe allegations in the criminal charge relate to the racketeering conspiracy charge, which includes accusations of kidnapping, drugging, coercing women into sexual activities. And we have to be careful. We have to be careful. And there was for example, there was a new civil charge last week, which happened to mention Jay-Z, Beyonce, and LeBron James. And they're not in the lawsuit as such. They're not being sued. They were mentioned in passing, but immediately people blow it up. They're being sued. No. But while we're on here, I think this infamous video, I shall never forget this. Nobody ever does. This is LeBron James talking to Puffy. Have a listen if you don't already know it.
Everybody know ain't no party like a Diddy party, so.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah.
Hey,
turn around and vibe. And Bron, when this is done, we're going to drink a couple of bottles of the most premium wine.
Please.
Yes, sir.
So remember, kids, there ain't no party like a Diddy party. So we shall see. But I think there is a problem with a lot of the civil claims, because it is so easy to accuse people after the fact when there's another pile of civil claims that are in the offing. And I was a music journalist. I worked in the music industry. I saw women just throw themselves at famous people, regardless of the consequences. I saw that. And that's not to say that everybody who has come forward isn't a victim. There are victims, but there will also be chances. And that is a reality. And I know people don't like that. They don't like it when I say that, but that is the reality. Did anybody see an interview with Terrence Howard? I saw this over the weekend. This was interesting, with Patrick Bet-David. It was an extraordinary interview. And Terrence Howard is a Hollywood actor. And he said that he didn't go to Diddy's parties because he would have to be, and it's 6 letters beginning with F. I think you got the word. Anyway, he said the problem is that when you get involved with Hollywood and when you go to a Diddy party, you will lose your man card. Those were his words, right? He said you give up your ability and right to be a man. And he said it was a homophobic statement, right? Because he's basically completely opposed to men and men. But I'm going to read you some of what he said. He said, a man don't take it, a man gives it. When you give up that right for anything, you lose spiritual energy. When you give up your manhood, I've never seen anyone recover from it. That was all those people who went to puffy parties. All those people who thought there wouldn't be consequences for what they were doing get pimped out for their desires. There shouldn't be a greater desire than being a man. I believe that's a big problem with all the actors out there because they get fluid. And once it gets fluid, it's gone. The fact is there are significant numbers of gay men, closeted gay men in the music industry and in Hollywood. What he was really saying was in Hollywood, if you don't do what they're asking, if you don't pay the piper, you don't get to play. And he's continued to work, and he acknowledges he's been squeezed out because he was not prepared to have relations with another man in order to rise. This is a very real issue, very real issue. So many people have come forward to sue Diddy, and statistically, not all of them are telling the truth, as I say. But my experience is people will go along with these things all of the time, be at the right parties, do what they're coerced to do because they think that's the way to get on. But it's a short-term gain. And he wasn't prepared to do it, right? I've lost patience with people like this over the years. He's speaking truth. I mean, I don't agree with him. I'm very much a LGB ally, as people know about me, and I don't necessarily agree with that. But what he's actually talking about is the rapes that take place within the music industry, the rapes that take place. And oftentimes it is men on men. There's a lot of closeted gay men in the music industry. We know that. That's a fact. Diddy is absolutely one of them. For years, he's had women as beards, right? And he may well be bi, but it would appear, according to everybody who knows him and everything that's come out now, that Diddy was never particularly interested in women, except when he was beating the crap out of them in hotel lobbies, or hotel corridors, rather, as he did with Cassie, his girlfriend, who tried to escape. And then Patrick Bet-David brought up Justin Bieber, right? And said, you see him struggling with that. And Howard responded saying, they can't get it out of their heads, the things they did, no matter how they did it, whether they were drunk or high or whatever. You gave up your man card. You need therapy. And that's the thing that hurts them the most. So I think what he's also saying is, when he says you gave up your man card, what he's actually also saying is these men were not gay, but they did it to get on. And I've seen it. I really have seen it with both men and women. He's talking fact. And it's a fact that people don't want to hear, right? And like he said, right, the women trade their bodies to get the role. They get their Oscars, the money, but they don't have their soul and the dreams they started with. So it's like achieving doesn't mean anything. And obviously that applies to men as well. He said, if I get all the Nobel Prizes from doing all this, but in the process, I have to trade out all my integrity to do it so that they can stay in place. What benefit is that if I lose all my integrity? You have to go in there as a principle and what we were brought in here as men. And Patrick Bet-David asked him whether he'd been invited to Puffy's party. Said, hell yeah. Puffy invited me for weeks to be his acting coach. He just looked at me when I was there. The next thing he said, I want to hear your music. And he was just, when I went there, he was just sitting there, just looking at me. And my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I said, what for? And my assistant said, I think he wants to F you. And I was like, okay, now I get it. So no more communication. And Terrence Howard just went, bang, I'm done. And I mean, the thing is that it's just kind of crazy, right? Yeah, and he threatened to knock out other producers for talking to him, looking at him like he was a woman. This is Terrence Howard. He said, I'm not having it. He said, I'm a man, right? I always to be the man in the room. Lost business because I don't bend over in that way. I don't compromise. I don't play gay roles. I don't kiss a man. I don't do that because a man card means everything. That's what he said. Because a man card means everything. And as I say, I'm a total ally. I really am. But I'm not entirely sure that's only what he's talking about. I think he's literally talking about straight men who are prepared to be, you know, in order to get on. And it's just short-termism because, like he says, you can have your Oscar, you can have all your awards. But if that's constantly on your mind that you had to be raped in order to be able to climb the ladder, what use is it? Yes, Ian, he's calling it a man card. That's what he's saying. It's weird. But the essential point, I get the essential point he's making. And Essie, that is an important point too. If one is drugged, then all consent goes out the window. Absolutely, it does. And for many years, Puffy's party was the place to be. As LeBron James said, ain't no party like a Diddy party, right? And yes, Chris, there is nothing wrong with a heterosexual man not wanting that. Absolutely. I mean, but what Terrence Howard is saying is if you don't pay the piper, you don't get to play. And so there you go. Yes, he did appear in Empire for several seasons. You're absolutely right. He did indeed. Right. Let's move on. What time are we up to? A little later than I anticipated. I wonder if I've got time for this. Yes, I think I have briefly. I do want to talk about this. I did mention it the other day, streaming propaganda. I said I was going to cover it on Friday. I ended up doing the live investigation. Leave the World Behind. It's described as an apocalyptic thriller starring Julia Roberts, Ethan Hawke, is executively produced by the Obamas. It's several years old now, but I fell upon it. Somebody had mentioned it to me. I found it, fell upon it. And it's got all this kind of crazy stuff in. And so the plot is basically husband and wife, Julia Roberts, Ethan Hawke, their 2 children. They arrange an impromptu weekend away, a vacation rental. And while they're there, when they get there, the first thing Julia Roberts notices in a shop, a man is stocking up and prepping. And he's like stocking up large quantities of canned food and water. Then they go to the beach and an oil tanker crashes onto the shore. Later, while the family are relaxing in this rental, the original owners turn up, say that there's a blackout. They can't get to their home in the city. And then there is like the child keeps going on about how she wants to see the season finale of Friends. And I feel that there is an absolute message in that as well. I want to bring in some images so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, because it all feels like predictive programming, which is why I wanted to talk about it with you guys. I wonder if I can just bring in some of these images. Let's bring in some of these images so you can see what I'm banging on about here. This one is, so this started off very curious for me, right? This is the son and daughter. And in the film, when they're wearing these T-shirts, you always see them stood side by side in this exact way. So it reads a certain way. I wonder if that's just uploading for me that I can use, just processing. And so here we go. Let's have a look at this. This is the son and daughter. And you look, obey NASA. And whenever they're featured in this film, they're always that way around. It's not NASA obey. It's always obey NASA, which in itself feels like a message, right? Do you, Kiwi? You remember when this film came out? Is this the film with Julia Roberts where the Tesla cars smash into each other? Marco, absolutely it is. And I think that's interesting. Driverless cars out of control, everything shut down. You guys know it, right? So it is all, there's lots of weird stuff going on. Obviously, there's like leaflets being dropped from the air that look like blood because they're all red. And then you have things like a large herd of deer appear in the background. As they're being hypnotized, and then the husband drives to town, he gets lost, he finds this Spanish speaking woman who's kind of like losing her crap. Then all these drone dropping leaflets are dropped, and it's all about kind of like attacking America, death to America. And then there's, like, as I say, the son and daughter, they're off wandering with their Obey NASA T-shirts. And then when the Sanfords are back at home later. The mother, Julia Roberts, and others discover flamingos in the pool before they experience a power failure. The next morning, Archie's teeth, which is the son, they just fall out, okay? Believing it is related because he had a tick bite. So they believed it was related to that. But actually, later it evolves that it was highly likely direct energy weapons that resulted in his teeth falling out. This was produced by the Obamas, for goodness sake. I mean, I was like, wait, what? Subliminal messages, Maria, and some, right? Oh, is there, Blue Nomad? Interesting, very interesting. And so then there's like a neighbor who's equipped with an underground bunker and suggests that the shrill noises, you know, that because they'd had these shrill noises and they believe that that was the direct energy weapons that had led to the son losing his teeth as one example. But it ends in a really, really peculiar way. I wonder if I've got some of these images that I want to show you as well. Just a really weird film. And do you know, sometimes you watch something and you feel that you've been programmed or that they've attempted to program you. And obviously all this stuff, the title of the film is isn't it Leave the World Behind? Leave the World Behind. It was a 2023 psychological thriller, so described. But this is interesting. So all the Teslas are then running out of control. They show Tesla and you're like, oh, and an advert for Tesla. And this is about the self-drive safety features. And then Julia Roberts, suddenly they're like trying to escape, right? They're trying to go elsewhere. And then what happens is that there's all these self-drive Teslas that suddenly end up in kind of like a pile-up. And you can see them. And I feel that there is a message there. But still people think these things can't happen. Is this the one with the Tesla cars going out of control? It is. And let me just bring in that image, which actually shows you something interesting. Let me see if I've got that. Did I just upload that? Maybe I've got too much going on this screen. This screen is saying, whoa, how many images do you want to mess with me this morning? But anyway, move from studio. Please choose a smaller file, the size limit. Okay, got you. Anyway, so what's happened is, let me try that then. Let me just try that again, because then you can just get the image of all the Teslas in the pileup. Are you going to let me? Oh, no, it won't let me. You can find the film. But so what happens is after she realizes it's a Tesla by looking at that image that I've just shown you, then all these Teslas they're all coming one after another. They're all on the freeway. They're all kind of piled up, all these self-drive Teslas. And then the daughter finds a neighbor's house with the bunker. Inside, there's a computer message which warns of attacks by rogue military elements and elevated radiation levels in many US cities. And the daughter finds a DVD of Friends and watches the season finale. And that's the end of the film. And it's bloody weird. It's weird. Christine, is weird. It's weird, but I did actually find it quite interesting. You might not be, Katie, you might not be a proper predictive programmer. It did feel like that, Crazy Bunny. It actually did feel like that. Right. So I did say I just wanted to just kind of mention that. And I am aware, as I say, it's 2 years old, but it's bloody interesting. Mark says it's bloody crap. Right. Okay. Let me talk about geoengineering. I'm sorry I'm not able to show all your geoengineering images, lovely people. I've had many, and delighted to say, so I have some good news. I'm delighted to say that I have agreed to speak at the geoengineering event in London on June the 21st with Matt Landman. He sent me a message. He asked me if I would appear and also about joining us on the show. Absolutely. And what I might actually do, because it's a Saturday, so I might not do a live stream on the Friday, and instead I might do Friday's live stream on Saturday from the geoengineering event in June. I think that would be absolutely brilliant. I look forward to doing that. Lots of people. We want lots of people. And of course, it's June the 21st as well. So that is, what is it? Remind me what June the 21st is. It's the summer solstice. Isn't that right? On June the 21st? And Randy said it's actually very telling of what's going on around the world. Are you the little girl? I might be. I saw a clip at the protest in France with Marine Le Pen. The chemtrails were insane, says Jackie. Sure they are. But this is lovely Karen. This is the most recent one. So this is why I'm going to show this one. This is lovely Karen. Karen is from Maidenhead. And this was yesterday. And the reason I want to show this is lots of people had contacted me saying the skies are really, really clear. And then I got Sharon's email saying, I've been in my garden all day with a lovely clear blue sky and beautiful sun and have seen various planes with contrails disappearing. But in the last half hour, it's changed to planes obviously dim in the sun. They can't let us enjoy a sunny day anymore. I hear you, Karen. It's outrageous. Stephen, it will be. Yes, June. It's just June the 21st. No, wait, no. It will be rain all day on the 21st. I'm not going to say that's funny. That would be so ironic. So very, very ironic. Right. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen, for that. And first, again, let me just say thank you so much to my donators as ever, to Alan C, to Ian J, to Jerry, to Cora, to Catherine M, all the people on the live stream who donate. Thank you so much. Perhaps we need to organize a system whereby if you're like tipping on the live stream, because I can't get your email address and I'd love to send you a behind the scenes video. So perhaps maybe what you could do is we can organize a system where you could perhaps give your emails to my mods if you want a behind the scenes video, because I'd love to be able to thank you in that respect. And thank you as ever to all the patrons on Patreon, and whether you've joined or upgraded. And our behind the scenes video this month is behind the scenes of the Lucy Letby, me traveling to Liverpool, and a bit on the protest and coming back. And there you go. Right. I want to end the show and talking about my fears and how I set out to overcome them. Right. So my fears are, I have two main fears in terms of like phobias, and I've worked on them a lot. And one of them is megalophobia. That doesn't mean I've got a giant ego. No, not at all. Megalophobia is an intense, irrational fear or anxiety specifically related to large objects, structures, or vast spaces, right? So an example of something that would ordinarily, before I had treatment, have triggered my megalophobia would actually be something like this. You know, in China, where they have those 3D adverts, that would be quite scary to me. That's a megalophobia kind of imagery. I want to bring in some more. Let me just see. Video file. Let me bring in some more that I wanted to refer to here. Because what's interesting is I don't just have megalophobia. I also, although here's another, this is a perfect example of, like, honestly, that statue is scary as anything. Not so much now. Large objects, right? I think it is scary. So that's the Statue of Unity. It's very famous. But my other fear is thalassophobia. And thalassophobia is the intense fear of the ocean or other large bodies of water. And they scare the crap out of me because I'm like, what the hell is down there? What the hell is going on? Right. And even in such circumstances, prior to me getting some treatment that I needed, oh no, I don't want that. Even an animation could trigger me. Let me just give you an example of an animation that could trigger me. Right. Large object, a statue. This is an animation. There's a diver, obviously, in a body of water. Now, that is the combination that would scare me, which is megalophobia and thalassophobia, right? Tasha says I'm a terrifying mess since I hit menopause. Bless your heart. So those are irrational fears, right? Not necessarily irrational fear to have a fear of a body of water, because we've only explored what 1/10 of water on this earth, right? So we have no idea really what's going on down there, right? There's loads of stuff going on down there. But anyway, I wanted to overcome all of these kind of things. My biggest thing probably was like megalophobia, because I also associated that with a fear of heights. Now, it's interesting. So in 2009, I sought to overcome these things, and I had quite an intense course of psychotherapy. Brilliant Nicola Griffiths, but brilliant Nicola, who gave me psychotherapy and hypnotherapy, and it worked. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to go on the London Eye, because I was petrified of going on the London Eye, because it's like you're up in the sky. My fear had come from being a child going on the big wheel when I was 9 years old with my sister's very nasty bullying friend, who my sister didn't want to go on the big wheel. So I went on with her friend, totally regretted it. We got to the top of the big wheel and she started to tip it over. And that's where my fear of heights and all of this all came from. I was pretty fearless before that, but that's where it all came from. This idea that I was going to drop out of the big wheel when I was 9 years old, and I was literally holding on to the bar. at 9 years old. Well, my sister's bullying friend was laughing her head off. She was like 16. She's like 16, 17. It was horrible. That's exactly why I wouldn't go on the big wheel, Crazy Bunny. That was it, right? Did you, Vanessa, worked in the commercial deep sea diving industry for 15 years? Fascinating. Wonderful. Wonderful. It's a brave new world indeed. Thank you, Randy. So I tell you all this because I really want to talk about how to overcome your fears. I think we're really in a time now that is just like so transparent. We see so much what's going on that I think we are now in a perfect position where we can start to truly realize who we are. And one of the things we need to do is get rid of some of our fears. So anyway, I did the hypnotherapy and I did eventually go on the London Eye, and there are pictures which I actually couldn't find, although I did find the newspaper article, which is still online, and it was about me overcoming my fear and how I did it. And so, but what I didn't realize was how I had those other fears attached to it as well, to a certain degree. And I no longer feel that same way necessarily about water, although I still get the EBGBs when I see things like those images that I've just shown you. So I want to talk about how to overcome your fear, because now is the time to do it, kids. Now is absolutely the time to do it. First and foremost, right? There are some things that you have every right to be fearful of, but some things are distorted. So, for example, if a dangerous snake is suddenly close to you, you have every right to be fearful. That's an evolutionary perspective. We are fearful of that snake because we are worried that it is going to bite us and harm us. That is a natural and rational fear. What isn't a rational fear, for example, is me standing next to a tall building and thinking it's suddenly going to do something to me, right? That's completely irrational, right? And so I wanted to get to the root cause of what that was, and I discovered what it was, and it was me being on that big wheel, etc. So I want to just talk through some simple points about how to overcome your fears. And first of all, I believe in exposure therapy. I am a big advocate of exposure therapy. And exposure therapy, if you're not familiar, is essentially facing your fears. And so that's what I did, like on the London Eye as one example. After I'd done the hypnotherapy, I then went on the London Eye and recorded it all for a newspaper, as you do when you're a journalist. And that was exposure therapy. There are other ways. Exposure therapy is the treatment as opposed to the end result. But going on the London Eye was part of the treatment, the exposure to the thing that scared me, being in the sky, high up, all of that. So that was part of it. But I very much believe in exposure therapy. So I used to be very bit concerned about spiders. And again, we don't need to worry about a money spider, but a tarantula we should be worried about. So there's rational and irrational. I cured my ick about spiders by, and this was not deliberate, we lived in a 400-year-old cottage and the spiders were so big you could see them breathing. The spiders were so big you could see the hairs on their legs, on their 8 legs. They were that big. And over time I started to they'd come out, like literally come out of the woodwork, and they just stare at you. And these were big spiders. But the more that I was exposed to them, the less scary they became to me. And that was when I started to understand this exposure therapy does work. And also around about that time when we lived in the 400-year-old house, I also started studying psychology, and I did a psychology degree. And again, I looked very much at exposure therapy and how that impacted me. So overcoming fears, if you're not yet ready to face your fear, right, there are ways around kind of like breaking it down. And one of the first things you need to do is understand and identify what your fear is. So it actually took me years to find the words to describe the fear of big things. I didn't really know what that was. And when I did, it was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I get that now, right? And so you need to understand what it is you're dealing with, right? You label it. And the moment you label it, you will help reduce its power. That much I do know. And also make sure you explore the root cause, just as I did, right? And then that gradual exposure, small steps, start small. And you know what? You can create what they call a fear ladder, which is basically list situations from least to most frightening and tackle them one step at a time. So if you have a series of fears, what are you least afraid of to what are you most afraid of? And just tackle them like that and see what will happen. Psychology is a beautiful thing, right? And what will happen is each time you tick something off your fear list, right, no matter how big or small it is, it sends a message to your brain that you can overcome greater things. That's what happens. And that's why It doesn't matter how small it is. Start small and progress from there. And also remind yourself that fear is not permanent. Fear is temporary. And allow yourself to feel that fear as well, the visceral reaction that perhaps it gives you. Okay. And one of the things that I had to do around preparing myself to go on the London Eye, as one example, was do a lot of relaxation techniques. So I do like quite a lot of deep breathing. I do meditation. I do all of that. One of the most important things is to focus on the here and now, focus on the present. A lot of our fears are as a consequence of what has happened to us historically, obviously, because they're not what's happened to us in the future. Although, having said that, a lot of people fear the future. They feel that they're not well prepared enough, which is why they managed to get so many people on the hamster wheel, because they've got people petrified that they're going to be, you know, in poverty in old age. So they better stock up now, right? So that is a fear in its own right. Yes, Mikey, false evidence appearing real. Yes. Yes, indeed. I saw Kath talking about a festival. We will do a festival one day, 100%, guys. And so, and also making sure to look after yourself, engage in activities that you enjoy. There is a percentage of our life where we have to do things that we don't like, right? I'm not talking about compromising your principles or morals, but sometimes we have to do jobs that are a bit tedious. Even in the job that I absolutely love, there are jobs within this job that I absolutely hate doing, but they have to be done. They have to be doing, whether that's uploading the videos online or whatever, or any of that stuff, or social media. I don't like doing social media these days. If anybody hasn't noticed, I am not a big fan of social media, but I have to do it because it's part of the job, right? And I cannot stress this strongly enough. Please, 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 please practice self-compassion. So many people care about what's happening out there. If you looked at what's happening within you, you count, you matter. Remember what they say, right? And that is, in a drowning situation, fix your own life jacket first, then you can fix everybody else's. And if you need to, do seek professional help. There's no shame in that, none whatsoever, right? So there we go. I hope you're well. I hope you're all well. And we've all got boring admin too. Oh, we do, Fox. And it has to be done, right? It has to be done. And Tasha, I don't think anybody has too much empathy. I know they tell us that, right? And I understand why you say that, because you probably feel a lot of pain from the world's pains. I get that. But isn't it far better to be sensitive than to be, you know, like a robot, an automaton? I would take being empathetic over being lacking compassion any day. Any day. Any day. Thank you. You're the best too, guys. Right. I am out of here. I will, of course, see you on Wednesday. Thank you for being here. Very much enjoyed the show with you today. And we're always, you know, adjusting and changing things. And sometimes we'll have more guests and sometimes we'll have less, and just see how it goes. But I'm going to end with a quote. I want to say thank you, of course, to all of our beautiful mods. And it's good to see our lovely Zoe back. She has been so poorly. She's an absolute trooper. Right. I want to end with a quote. And that is, thinking will not overcome fear. But you know what does? Action. That's right. Face your fears and vanquish them, beautiful people. I will see you Wednesday. Take excellent care of yourself. Have a brilliant Monday and have a brilliant Tuesday. See you Wednesday at 5. Take care. Lots of love.